Blank are typically comprised of a mix of blank and blank. And so, this is a question where uh, we, if we were given answer choices, would not really know what is necessarily the case. We could guess, but typically we wouldn't see this type of question without an answer like multiple choice answer, or at least some sort of foreshadowing in a previous class. But if I had to guess without looking at the answers, what we're looking at for here is probably something along the lines of an investment portfolio or something finance related, where you have a mix of assets that together create a single portfolio of investments. You might have something like some sort of portfolio is typically comprised of a mix of stocks and maybe like uh, bonds or treasury notes and something like that, right? So we'll take a look at answer choices, look at the previous answer to see what they put. And so they said mutual funds are typically comprised of a mix of stocks and bonds. And that's true. And so that's going to echo a lot of what I was talking about. You can think of a mutual fund as an investment portfolio that basically assembles a range of assets, of financial instruments that allows, and then it sells off shares of that entire portfolio to investors to invest in. And so what it really is it's providing very, very kind of cheap diversification in your investments. The reason you would invest in a mutual fund is because you want to have a diverse portfolio of investments. You want to have like 20% of my money is invested in this company, or that's already a lot. 20% of my money is invested in a certain industry of stocks. Another 20% is invested in treasury notes. Another 20% is invested in bonds, and another 20% is invested in a variety of other company stocks or indexes, right? To actually assemble that portfolio by yourself is very, very expensive. There are some costs that can cost several $100s, and you might only be able to afford one or two of those stocks, right? But you still want that diversification. And what mutual funds do is they provide a service where they pool the funds of investors who can't afford to basically create a very diverse portfolio of their own, and they pool together all of these stocks and bond, all this money from a bunch of different investors, and then they go out and make a very diverse portfolio, and they create this whole quote unquote pie made up of stocks, bonds, treasury notes, etc. And then they sell off slices of that pie, like slices that encompass a little percentage of everything in that entire portfolio, and you basically get a stake in the entire mutual fund, which is an already pre-diversified portfolio. And so that's what you would invest in a mutual fund for. And it has the advantage of allowing you to buy a slice of a very diverse portfolio without having to buy full stocks in all of these various companies, which might be very expensive. And you also, a lot of times they have managers, and so you don't have to manage the diversification very much yourself. So going back to the answer that the previous tutor provided, they're typically comprised of a mix of stocks and bonds, and that's generally true in terms of investing. Stocks and bonds are predominant types of financial instruments. A mutual fund is a basket of various investments, such as stocks, bonds, and cash. A mutual fund is funded by the investments of individual investors and institutions, right? So you're collecting money of investors. Mutual fund companies professionally manage a portfolio of stocks and bonds by pooling the money of many investors. Mutual fund companies pool the money of many investors to buy the portfolio, and any gains and losses flow directly to them. So I think that last part is a little bit misleading. Mutual fund companies pool the money of many investors to buy this portfolio or assemble this portfolio is more accurate, the word, and that's true. But because they're in exchange for the money of the investors, what they're promising is shares of the returns, gains and losses do not flow directly to them as in the companies or the managers, although they may get a cut. The gains and losses flow back to the investors, right? And so I think that's something that we want to modify here. Mutual fund companies do pool the money of investors to assemble a portfolio, but gains and losses flow directly. Oh, I see. Maybe they mean by directly as in like the fund initially gets the gains and losses, but the fund always has to pay out those gains and losses back to investors. But so we'll say gains and losses flow ultimately flow to the investors and not the mutual fund managers companies, although the managers companies may take a small cut. So